I think I'm from a generation where we've been exposed to certain content that made it easy for us to understand concerns about the environment and how human influence has drastically transformed the world, and not for the better in terms of humans being able to live well in it. Hi, my name is Leeroy. I'm an artist and designer based in the Philippines. I do mostly large-scale spatial constructions, basically hybrid worlds that come in the form of immersive installations, but also through my collaborations with performance artists, theater makers, movers, and dancers. I also get to design the creatures, the entities that inhabit these spaces through my wearable pieces that most often use the same materials as the spatial constructions. My work for Somerset House is an extension of these hybrid worlds that I build with every visit to different countries and different cities. It's no different from the project, these three vessels that I'm doing for the courtyard. I've been exploring these vessels in the past made of bamboo and random discarded objects and other collected materials. And it's always interesting what I find in the different places. It's quite serendipitous that the workshop that we're building the ships in is right next to a waste sorting facility. So we basically are able to source everything there, and after the project, it will be returned to them as well. It's very interesting to be able to rummage through the different surplus and discards of a particular city that's not the Philippines, you know. So there are very interesting things that I end up using, like a lot of DVD cases or like plastic containers of different shapes and sizes and colors. And of course, plastic bottles, through donations, through the many volunteers who've resorted to setting aside their plastic bottle wastes and donate it for this project. It's always a surprise to find evidences of the material culture of each place. The scale is also quite an interesting challenge, since they will appear as kind of simplified temples, if you will. So the work is called Arks of Gimokudan, and it has a lot to do with me moving to a particular place and responding on the things that we find on site, and with this kind of spontaneity that produces very interesting results. If I do say so myself. I'm originally from the south of the Philippines, this small city called General Santos City, mainly known for its fishing industry. Growing up, I remember there was very little access to art, almost none actually. There were a few paintings in our local mall, and there was one art book I found in our library in school. So I had to be kind of resourceful in seeking out my sources for art. I didn't know it at that time, but I was interpreting sci-fi films, horror films, comic books, illustrated card games, illustrated books as my form of art. And even movie magic was something that was very creative to me. There was this one show about exposing the different special effect tricks and like, you know, the sets that they were building for these fantasy films that kind of really spoke to me. And I think that led to me wanting to create these worlds myself. I would always remember that special effects show that I saw as a kid about these worlds being built through creative means. Whether I knew it or not, that kind of defined my approach to creative practice. I would seek out different collaborators all the time, like from urban planners, urban designers, to environmental scientists, and see how I can apply my training in a more practical sense. Most recently, I've done projects wherein we activated the main river in Metro Manila by creating this floating island/performance space with my urban designer collaborator, Julia Nebrija. So I love learning from these other specialists, because through these intersections, I find I'm able to create what for me is more meaningful work. The recent pandemic also kind of drastically shifted my own practice to seek out more efficient and sustainable ways of creating these large-scale worlds that I've been building. Because previously, I would largely use found objects, but also there would be a good amount of new materials as well. But because of the lockdowns and back then the increasing uncertainty of incoming resources and food security was an issue, I forced myself, basically challenged myself to use whatever materials were available, which led to a series of works using mostly collected plastic bottles in Manila. And this is continued with my work for Somerset. Coming from where I live in the Philippines, you get a sense of how bad things are when you see like rivers filled with trash, almost to the point that it feels like it's a solid mass of trash floating. And during typhoons, you see like how plastic debris gets washed up onto our shores, especially in the city along our more prominent bay. This kind of dystopic future where the Philippines feels like the dump site for developed countries is not a stretch. You know, there have been instances like that controversial case where non-recyclable waste from Canada were being secretly shipped to the Philippines, you know, just to be disposed of. We are being targeted by these global brands to consume more plastics. Like, you know, for example, you know, the typical Filipino family wouldn't be able to afford a huge bottle of shampoo. So instead, these companies decide to repackage these shampoos into small sachets so that more people can buy them for less. So, you know, this narrative, you know, this idea that we'll bear the brunt of the negligence of certain developed countries in terms of like their waste production is not far from happening. It's actually, you know, happening. Since people who've encountered my work gravitate towards the fact that I've used discards and surplus materials, and I myself feel that one must kind of challenge oneself to apply, you know, the skills that you have to things that may actually present viable solutions to these urgent environmental concerns.